Well, here we are, 10 years later. Can you believe it? This was actually the spot we took the photo. We took our wedding photo.
Yeah.
And look at this. That's awesome.
It's a beautiful view.
Beautiful city.
We only realized
It's freezing.
10 years later we got married in Kentucky, not Cincinnati.
Yeah, that is the funniest thing. But yeah,
We always thought we were on the Cincinnati side.
This is the beautiful city of Cincinnati.
Yes.
And absolutely beautiful. And this was the actual place where this is where I felt God said 10 years ago when we got married that one day we're going to plant a church.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati, what if it would be Cincinnati? And I obviously told you that a year later, at a restaurant, you know, what if God, use us to plant a church? And
I was like, what in the world?
and we're like, no, not Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But
God changed my heart.
10 years later, we planted a church, Heart Church.
Yeah.
And man, I couldn't be more excited about it, and obviously about this city of Cincinnati and what God is going to do, and what that would look like. I mean, it's been a miracle story.
Yeah.
I mean,
such a miracle.
Just how God has put it together.
Yeah.
10 years later.
I remember we were trying to figure out what to call the church when we decided we're going to launch a church.
Right.
And we sat together and had like a list of many names.
And you narrowed the name down.
We had lots of names.
Yeah,
I
we
was
had
like
so
trying
many
to figure
names.
out what names meant, what their meaning was, where they came from.
I mean, I probably had a couple of interesting names.
Probably.
Yeah, the Bengals Church of the Resurrection.
Really. Really. And we came up with Heart Church.
Yeah.
Because the meaning of Heart Church is we have a heart for God,
heart
for people, and a heart for our city, and it's simple. That's our.
And that has always been, even the heart of Jesus was love God and love people. And I love that our church, I mean, when we launched September 18th, and we're a few weeks into that, and how God is just, again, beginning, which I feel, and we both have been chatting about it, we both feel that there's a rebuilding that is happening.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we always say in our church was, we're going to build a church that's going to help build the city.
Yes.
And if I look at the city, like, it's so interesting because I remember even on your guys' dollar bills or actually on all the money, it says in God we trust.
Yeah.
And that always blew my mind because like where we're at now in the world today, especially in the United States, I feel like it's gone so far from that.
Yeah.
There's young people that don't go to church, don't know God.
Yeah.
People who knew Jesus walked away from God.
Yeah.
And people hardly going to church. And that kind of stirred me up of like, man, this used to be a nation that used to be so passionate about Jesus, so passionate about God, and has walked away from that, and praise God that he never walked away obviously from them.
Yeah.
But here we are to show and build something.
We can help rebuild.
Right, and we can potentially build a church that can rebuild people.
Yeah. Rebuild people's families,
Yeah.
rebuild people's marriages, rebuild people's homes, rebuild people's mindsets and lives and children and futures, and rebuild our city for God.
And really, I'm so excited. I think churches have gone through so many seasons, and I really do believe for the city, that we're going to see, just a greater move of God.
Yes.
And like, man, people are excited getting back into church.
Yeah.
Getting back in relation with Jesus.
People who have never been to church, loving church again.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see that. And I think, we always said, building a church to build a city, it was never about buildings.
Yeah.
It was never about, how big the church building can be. It's always been about people.
Yeah.
And I feel like,
So that's what the church is for, showing people Jesus.
Yeah. And so, and this was the place, and I felt like God stirred that, and here we are, we're beginning to write that story with a whole lot of amazing people from our church, and we're pretty excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, awesome.
Building it one person at a time, one family at a time.
One person at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rebuild. Let's go 2023.
Let's go 2023.
Let's go.
My name's Kelly Earls, and I have been part of Heart Church since the beginning. We joined the Dream Team right away, and the first interest meeting ever for Heart Church. I was extremely excited and felt, for sure, a warmth and a wonderful feeling that this was going to be our church. my mom and dad, we grew up in church, a Methodist, and always attending church together as a family, maybe not every single Sunday, but always together. I wouldn't say I had a personal connection with God and Jesus, definitely that I have today. I started doing Bible studies at church, and I started doing prayer groups and leading prayer groups, and that got me closer and closer. And then we struggled with a family member who had some addiction problems, and that brought our family closer, wanting to seek assurance and hope and peace with that. And God's been amazing. He's answered every prayer, and I'm happy to say that family member is sober now and doing amazing. And we owe it all to Jesus, and He knows, and He says always, it's all God's work. My family, I've prayed always for them to be involved and all of us to be together at one church and not separate, and that we all were serving God together. And Heart Church was our answer to that. I love doing whatever is needed at the church, and welcome committee and all of those things, passing out Bibles to new people in their faith, and new visitors in their faith, and welcoming them. And then my husband, who can be a tough nut to crack sometimes, came on board to help with production. He works in IT, so it was the perfect place for him to be able to use his expertise for the house of God. And he jumped right in and related awesome with Ty and Rachel, and loves it as much as I do. And then my oldest daughter, Olivia, who's 21, and her boyfriend, Cole, also love IT stuff and production, and they jumped in and joined Mike on that team, and we're so excited to be there and love it and never want to miss. And then my youngest, Sydney, who can be kind of difficult as far as, not herself, but that age, the teenage. She's 18 and not always the age that wants to come to church. And she absolutely loved it right away when she met Rachel and Ty, and decided she would even start the youth group. And started a youth group here, and has gotten probably 15 to 16 people, give or take, on different weeks to come. And she also loves babies and kids, and so she's part of the student ministry and works in the nursery, along with a bunch of her friends from high school that were not involved necessarily in a specific church, and jumped on board, and they're loving it as well. We were born and raised in Cincinnati. My whole family was, and we were always a part of a church. I guess I could say a part of a church, but never real active in a church. I always did Bible studies and prayer groups and things like that, but our whole family would go, but that was about it. They just attended. They weren't involved, and they weren't connected the way that they are now. That's my most awesome gift, is that's been my prayer always, that my whole family would attend together, and that we would connect together and find our place, that everybody feels like this is it, and I love what I'm doing, and I want to help, and I want to get closer to God, and build our relationships and build our community. And this is definitely the place for all of us. And I'm so thankful that my prayers for many, many years are finally answered.
Imagine a church that can rebuild a city. The widow to find joy, the brokenhearted to be healed, the single parent to find hope, families to be restored, the lost to be found, the blind to see, the sick to be healed, a generation to rise. A church that can